Greetings, growers worldwide. Jordan River here, back with more GrowCast. Just a fun guy doing a podcast. Today we have Oklahoma Fungi back on the show. Jacob is here to talk about growing mushrooms alongside cannabis. He's here to talk about some upcoming events that he's doing that I'm absolutely thrilled about. I'm going to be at OK Mush Fest. And he's also here to talk about growing mushrooms into an actual living ashtray. Very, very cool. I know you're going to love today's episode. Before we jump into it, though, shout out to AC Infinity. Code GrowCast15 getting you 15% off now across the board at acinfinity.com. Now, there's been some changes to the code that I need to tell you about. First of all, like I said, it's now 15% across the board. For a while, it depended on what you were getting, or it was 10% off, or the discount didn't apply. They're trying to send people to the website. So what do you get now? GrowCast15 is the code, 15% off all items at acinfinity.com. Plus free shipping on orders $99 or more. So they're sending people to their website. Code GrowCast15 saves you a chunk on the best fans in the game. Grow tent kits, lights, scissors, pots. My favorite grow tents out there. Whatever you need, grab it from acinfinity.com and use code GrowCast15 for 15% off. Plus you get free shipping, $99 or more at the website acinfinity.com. Plus on Amazon, if you're still going to order on Amazon, GrowCast15 saves you 5%. So go ahead and grab what you need, a whole new tent setup, some scissors, some sleeves, some sunglasses, whatever you need, grow tent stuff, grow gear, it's all there, acinfinity.com, code GrowCast15. Thank you to AC Infinity. All right, everyone, let's get into it with Oklahoma Fungi. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Hello, podcast listeners. You are now listening to GrowCast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in again today. Before we get started, as always, I urge you to share this show. Tell someone about GrowCast, turn a grower onto the show, or turn a smoker onto growing. It's the best thing you can do, and it helps us on our mission of overgrow. Check out growcastpodcast.com. There you'll find everything, the classes, the seeds, and the membership. What are you doing? Jump in membership. Thank you to all the members who make this possible. Today, we're back with another GrowCast podcast. We're back with a friend of the show, fan favorite for sure, mycology expert, host of the amazing OK Mush Fest, and so much more. Jacob from Oklahoma Fungi is on the line with us right now. What's up, Jacob? How you doing, man?
Amazing. I'm doing really well this morning, getting to talk with you about all of our upcoming plans for Mush Fest and just the world of cannabis and mushrooms. I love it all.
Oh, man, you're always full of energy, Jacob. You know, like I get around, I get some things done. I think I think that there are varying levels of drive in this industry and in all industries, really. And man, you've been getting after it. You have been getting after it. Your event last year was awesome. You're planning for another huge one this year, going bigger, going better. And you've also just been going around speaking and traveling and doing events and stuff. Why don't we start there? Where have you been? Which events have really stood out to you as awesome? And what have your travels been like since we last spoke?
I'm not even sure when the last time we spoke was. Maybe about OK Mush Fest was the last time, maybe in person. But since just like over the past month, I did 4 mushroom events back to back to back. And so the first one was out in Pennsylvania. This was actually the Pocono Mountain Cannabis Fair. So we're starting to see more cannabis events, whether they're local or they're national. We're starting to see them incorporate more mushrooms into the different aspects. And so I was invited to this cannabis event to judge, but also to lead a mushroom foray. And so I would take people out there, of course, we were looking for magic mushrooms, looking for all the things that could possibly be growing during that season. It was a little bit dry, so we didn't find any of the active mushrooms, but we did find some really cool edibles. So that was Pennsylvania, the first weekend of August. The second weekend of August, I went to an event called MycoFest, which is a big mushroom festival out in Pennsylvania. And I spoke about community building and the importance of teaching people about how to identify fungi. So when they do other things in their life, they have a little bit of skill set in their back pocket. I taught a really nice intro course out in Pennsylvania. And then the next weekend, I threw a big mushroom block party in Denver with one of my buddies at the mushroom classroom there. So we had about 35 vendors. We ended up selling 1,024 tickets, and it was in the heart of Denver. So it was really, really cool to be able to educate, promote, vend, and get to showcase what's happening in an environment that's much more relaxed. And what I mean is because of the Prop 122 with the legalization of entheogens and magic mushrooms in Colorado, we're starting to see more events open up, and not just in what they allow, but in the education that they provide. So I was very happy to be able to go up there. And man, we got one more. The weekend after that, I went up to the biggest mushroom festival in the U.S., at least by social media scale, is the Telluride Mushroom Festival. So I went up there for my 27th birthday and danced like a mushroom down in the parade and attended classes, attended workshops, did forays, little ego death action, and came back much better.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. And that's the Telluride festivals. You've been all over. Is Colorado kind of the heart of this movement, would you say?
What's interesting is, like, if you look at mushrooms from different perspectives, you'll find different states that you'll like will be representative of that. So like the button mushrooms that we see at the grocery store, like the little white ones or the brown ones, those are grown in Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania produces millions upon millions of pounds of these button mushrooms every
Whoa.
year. Like, one company I met does 110 million pounds of mushrooms a year.
That's crazy. I didn't know that Pennsylvania was such a huge exporter of edible mushrooms.
Yeah, so Pennsylvania is the number one producer for mushrooms in the United States when it comes to the gourmets. But when it comes to the active mushrooms, more so the magic mushrooms, Colorado is somewhere that we're seeing everyone kind of look at right now, because they're the second state to go forward with full state legalization. Even though Prop 122 is a little bit different than most people anticipated, it still hasn't been recalled like what we saw in Oregon. So Oregon, they decriminalized everything, and then they took it all back and recriminalized it. So
that makes sense.
This year, we're actually in 2025. What we're hoping to see is that Proposition 122 rolls out in a steady, smooth way for patients and for businesses and for the overseeing agencies. So that way, that essentially that program can be used as a template for all the other states surrounding it, including ours.
Oh, well, here's hoping, man. Here's hoping. But I love what you said earlier, which is certainly how we've connected and we've met, which is you're starting to see fungi represented in the cannabis culture and at cannabis events. And you're starting to see cannabis represented at fungi events. I mean, obviously, they're the two most prevalent, illegal, potent plant medicines of our generation, for sure. So there's that connection. Obviously, they're stigmatized. They're extremely beneficial for very, very niche cases when it comes to medical treatment. Plus, people like them. People like having fun with them, and it makes people feel good and better and fun. So I think they're similar in that way. But there's really so much more going on. First of all, just learning about fungi, kind of like what you said about identification, it's just kind of a life lesson. It teaches you more about the universe. It teaches you how things work. And especially if you're a grower, when you learn about the soil food web, even if you're not like a living soil guy, when you're using that myco during transplant, it survives those fertilizers much better than the bacteria. And there's a reason you're using that. And when you learn about nutrient cycling and decomposition, A, it makes you smarter as a person, and B, it makes you a better grower, learning about fungi. And I'm sure it's the same way when you're learning about fungi to learn about plants. So yeah, that's just my thought. I'm really glad to see people working together and representing each other at these events. And you sure do learn a lot from expanding that range of knowledge, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the first people that I learned about how to cultivate magic mushrooms from were cannabis growers. And so, whether it was because of the counterculture stigma and everyone having to go underground with what they do, and, the first guy that I bought cannabis from was the first guy I bought mushrooms from. And so, I think that our cultures are intertwined, if not the same, in the cultivation aspect. If you can respect the plant as it grows and understand the plant, then you have the capacity to understand the mushroom. And together you can learn how to work with both of them in a better way.
So true. And thinking about how old they are and how they interface, that's a really important just lesson about our place in the universe. If you look at how young humanity is and then you look at how young mammals are, then you look at how old plants are, and then you look at how old fungi is, may have came here, it can survive space travel, may have came here on an asteroid.
To be honest, it could have been sent here.
It could have been sent here. Yeah, I like where you're going, Jacob. I like where you're going.
It's all too amazing and fascinating to rule anything out.
I agree with that. And it makes us feel small in a good way. You know, these are very, very old life forms that hold a lot of wisdom and interface with each other. And we just get to dabble and enjoy them and proliferate them. It's an honor, to be honest.
Absolutely it is.
Let's get into the specifics, though, because you were talking about some really cool stuff when it came to your side of that kind of treaty, which is taking cannabis compost and waste and things like that and using it in mushroom production. This is not something I've heard before. Can you talk about this cannabis process for mushroom substrate?
Yeah, so it really depends on most of the growers, and I'm sure part of the growcast are going to be growing for the flowers. And so if you're cultivating for the flowers, and as the plant grows, it's not always in like the perfect arrangement for you to go through and put through like a wood chipper or something like that. So you might have to go through, this is once the plant's already harvested, dried, cured. We have this biomass that we're not sure what to do with it. A lot of people throw it away. It's great for compost, but even better than that, after it's done being compost, it can become a mushroom substrate. And so my goal as a mushroom cultivator and educator is to help promote the reduction of waste, right? To help with our waste management. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of growers and mushroom growers too, and in general plant growers at nurseries or cannabis farms, we see a lot of green biomass, and we're figuring about how can we mitigate this. And so, if you live in an apartment, you're growing indoor, it's salt-based, you don't have organic compost or compost at all nearby, then this might not work best for you. But if you do have the ability to take a little bit of extra space, chop down essentially your biomass to smaller amounts and incorporate it with some local compost and let it sit and let it degrade, and you can incorporate some IMO, you can incorporate some water, make sure it's covered with a tarp or from above, at least shaded so it's not getting full blast by the sun. The goal is that the material, whatever, say it's 100 pounds of biomass that's going into the trash once every 3 months, you could incorporate that, much like what we see OK Calyx doing, into his own backyard setup, and able to help not only save costs on adding soil, but knowing exactly what's in the soil and where it came from is so important.
You're so right. I find that one of the worst things you can do as a grower is to let that biomass go into the garbage, because there's so many things you can do with it. Taking it and using JLF, turning it back into fertilizer, just putting it into your compost, essentially, turning it into compost and getting those nutrients back. You paid money for all of those nutrients, especially if you're using bottles. You're literally paying for this bottle of nutrition to pour into the soil to create these big old fan leaves they contain everything that you need for a plant. A healthy green cannabis leaf is the best thing to feed cannabis. So to take that and throw it away is the mistake. Eating your leaves, feeding them to your livestock, whatever people do. But you're saying, hey, take this and make it into like a mushroom block that people grow mushrooms out of.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that once people get to that compost step, most people are taking that compost and then reapplying it back to their plants and growing more plants with it. And that's epic. That's awesome. That's what we want. But also, if they're growing mushrooms, they can incorporate that same compost into their outdoor mushroom beds, or they can pasteurize it and actually be able to cultivate more mushrooms based off of cannabis amended compost.
Oh, I got you. So it's less about creating like it's about adding it to your outdoor bed or something like that.
It's about, you can either add it to your outdoor bed, or if I'm not sure how familiar you are with the cultivation process, but through pasteurization, you can kill off a little bit of the microbes, a little bit of the bacteria, but not everything. So that way you can apply your sterile mushroom grains and allow your desired culture to grow around and myceliate this substrate bag that's filled with cannabis compost and other soil amendments.
Whoa.
And then from there, you can get healthy mushrooms to grow off of that bag. You can take the mushrooms and eat them. You can take what we call the spent substrate and apply that back into the soil. And it's almost really the non-carbon neutral part of that would be if you're growing the mushroom in a plastic bag. That's the only waste.
That's literally what I was going to ask is, could you treat this just like a block in a bag like I've seen before, and you can just grow mushrooms straight out of pasteurized cannabis compost? That's amazing.
Yeah. And just to clarify, it's not just on like cannabis leaves and stems. It definitely needs to be incorporated with organic matter as well as worms and some of those other organic gardening amendments that you might have on hand. That will help to speed up the decomposition and aid the fungi into breaking these things down. Because really what fungi are doing is they're sweating out these enzymes that break down the stuff around them so they can reabsorb them through their skin. So it's this wild concept that's kind of like salamanders or amphibians that live in the rainforest, where they have super permeable skin and they can excrete stuff that affects their environment. Fungi do the same thing. And so when they're excreting these enzymes and they're reabsorbing them, that is what we want to be able to provide, something healthy, because what we give to them, they absorb, and they're bioaccumulators, just like plants are.
That's a really good way to put it, because I've heard about the production of these enzymes, and enzymes being catalysts for breakdown of very specific things and changing things like pH and all sorts of chemistry within the soil. But I hadn't heard it described like that, kind of sweating it out their skin to reabsorb it within themselves. That's the whole decomposition process.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful to have been able to travel around and get to learn from really, really bright minds and that have been doing this for like 30, 40, some even 50 years. The professor that I work with at the university in Oklahoma, he's in his 70s, and it's so amazing to have people who are willing to explain things, who've been doing it for so long, and they've come up with some really good metaphors to describe these things. And like one I've heard was that mushrooms are like sitting in the bowl of Jell-O that they're trying to eat.
These are the types of analogies I need to understand. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Jell-O analogy. I can wrap my head around that. I've been in a bowl of Jell-O. I know that scenario. So tell me this then, if we can take this kind of generalized approach to fungi, forget you're on a cannabis show, forget all of that. Let's just say I have some dirt, let's say, and I want to make the fungi go crazy. I want to feed them. I want to beef them up. I want to proliferate them. What am I adding? You mentioned like these other garden amendments help. Like what microbes play nice? What nutrition? What can I add to my soil to make fungi go crazy?
So anything that you can add that's going to attract worms and insects. Worms and insects, if you're not adding them into the compost, the amendments that you add, like the organic matter, whether it's vegetable scraps, whether it's fan leaves, whether it's wood chips, these things, once hydrated, are either going to already have fungi in them, or like endophytic fungi, or they're going to be attracting insects that are going to be releasing spores through their excrement or through the spores that are traveling on their bodies as they come to visit the compost. And so whether or not that like you're actively incorporating fungi into the compost, it's already going to be there. And as long as the compost isn't getting too hot and it's not getting overly saturated, you will start to see these fungal biomes increase. To further increase the production of like your native, like you could work with IMO, you could go out in the woods and collect some of, I wouldn't say like species out there because it's so difficult to ID species, but you could go out there for some sample collection, come back and expand it. And from there, you could be able to incorporate what's indigenous to your area versus what is going to survive in the compost from the insects.
That's a great answer. Attracting more insects to I think that's where a lot of beginners get thrown off a living soil cultivation situation. I certainly receive the message all the time,
holy crap, I have root aphids, I have some sort of pest, because they find that they have soil mites, right? In their soil. It's like, no, no, no. You want to, worms are the best thing you can have in there. You want to attract, that's how the soil food web works. It's a holistic, broad system. It incorporates a lot of things. You know what I mean? From, yes, the fungi and the bacteria and the protozoa and all this stuff, but the insects and the birds and the local mammals and all of these things play a role. Sounds like it's the same thing you're talking about with the health of the soil for fungi.
I think that there's still so much we don't know about the interaction that insects and fungi have. And also the way that all three of them, plants, insects, and fungi, all interact. And so I just want to also share that there was an experiment that was done by Paul Stamets. It was called the petroleum problem. And basically they'd taken two compost piles, one that was filled with petroleum contaminated compost, inoculated with oyster mushrooms with fungi, and another compost non-inoculated. And you can look into this after if you want. I can also send you the link. But the synopsis of this experiment was that the compost that was contaminated but still had fungi was able to attract more biodiversity, which therefore helped to break down the contamination at a much faster rate. And so it's still, to be determined essentially where the contamination went. Was it actually broken down or was it reabsorbed? Regardless, in the experiment, when they did the testing, the percentage of the petroleum contamination did decrease in the compost that had been inoculated with oyster mushrooms. And so I think it's really fascinating that what we're seeing is fungi starting to break down petrochemicals and then insects coming to eat these fungi, but not having negative effects from the petrochemicals that the fungi are breaking down. It's what is going on?
That's amazing. That's incredible. And I heard about that. I think I heard about that same experiment, how the oyster mushrooms would turn dark from the petroleum products and then eventually lighten back up. I think I had heard something about that. Just amazing how, it sucks too, Jacob, because these are bioaccumulative properties. The same thing you mentioned with cannabis, maybe if you haven't heard that term before, the idea that the plant is accumulating things out of the ground, sometimes other than the major macro and micronutrients. Cannabis is a good bioaccumulator for heavy metals. And so what people do, unfortunately, Jacob, is they spin this as kind of a negative aspect. Oh, well, if you don't grow it right, you're going to have heavy metals in your flower and then you're smoking lead. And it's no. This bioaccumulation property is where the magic happens. That means you can get that stuff out of the soil. That means, after Chernobyl, they went in there and planted a bunch of hemp to remove the uranium. And yeah, you don't smoke that flower. That turns into fiber or turns back into compost, or I don't know where it goes. You take it somewhere other than where you are.
Yeah, that's honestly, Jordan, that's still the thing that I think the scientific community and the hemp community is figuring out is, when these plants are absorbing the contamination from the soil, are they actually breaking it down on a molecular level? Or is trace amounts still found in the plant biomass? And what we're seeing with mushrooms is that they're actually breaking down these bonds. They're actually taking them on the smallest level and ripping these molecules apart and breaking them down. And so it's truly amazing.
Wow. Listen, that's the type of testing we need, because we know it's out of the soil. We're assuming it's in the plant. That's a really good point. And people pop hot for this or for that. And it's that is the unfortunate but also blessed nature of these things. So to me, it's that's how we save the environment. And people spin it as a bad thing sometimes. So
yeah, in Asia, I think it's 80% of the non-button mushrooms consumed in the US are imported from Asia. And it's not uncommon for these mushrooms that come from overseas to be high in heavy metals.
Wow.
And it's the same thing. They're cultivating in environments that they haven't properly tested the soil or properly tested their inputs. And so even though these mushrooms, in some cases can break down these compounds, in some species and other species in other situations, they cannot. All they do is absorb them and then we consume them. And so, yeah, I just wanted to touch on how important it was to know, are these things, are these molecular chemists breaking down the contamination, or are they absorbing it? Because that's something that we want to know as people who are cultivating and consuming these organisms.
right? And generally we're dealing with when we take a look at like your average home grower, we're dealing with species of fungi that don't fruit, right? Like mycorrhizal fungi doesn't ever come up into a mushroom bloom. Am I wrong about that? The type of myco that we use certainly doesn't.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We typically do not see fruiting bodies come from the myco applications. Occasionally we'll see what the the plant pot parasol. It's like a yellow mushroom, Leucocoprunii or something like that.
And of course, we see other things because we use the soil with compost, which has like a bunch of fungus in there. But
Yeah,
let's
you're on a
talk
great
about
track.
that, though. Let's talk about the competition or not thereof between cannabis and mushroom cultivation, specifically magic mushroom cultivation. Before I ask this question, I do want to thank you for coming on and talking about the wine cap mushroom and growing that in living soil beds, because I had 3 or 4 listeners, one close friend of mine in membership, do that thing that you said, do that wine cap flush or whatever, where they apply those spores to their living soil bed. And they had this wonderful harvest of edible mushrooms right next to their outdoor cannabis. So thank you for that. And follow-up question, is that something we can do similarly with magic mushrooms?
Absolutely. I was testing the waters the first time I mentioned that because I wasn't sure if I should just, drop you can grow magic mushroom next to your cannabis right on the first podcast. So I appreciate everyone who listened and dabbled in the gourmets. I think if my favorite thing about the wine caps and growing it in the outdoor, whether it's your vegetables or your cannabis, is that wine caps they don't like sterile environments. They actually grow really well with bacteria. And so that's something that I really recommend to gardeners because it's not in a sterile technique. You don't need a lab. You don't need a face mask or gloves or isopropyl. A lot of the stuff that I do in mycology requires being sterile. But, this outdoor cultivation, the best thing about it is you don't need to be sterile. In fact, you don't want to be sterile because you could be negatively impacting the adaptability of the organism. And so to give an overview for people who weren't listening to the wine cap or haven't heard the first episode, if you already have an established garden bed or you already have a trail that leads to your garden that is covered in wood chips or you're mulching with wood chips, specifically hardwood wood chips are going to be the best. If it's cedar or pine, those can be a little bit more tricky because they have these compounds with these they're not fungicide, but they're compounds that aren't necessarily most conducive to beneficial fungal growth. And that's why we don't see a lot of edible mushrooms growing off of cedar or pine trees. We see them growing off of the ground through the ectomycorrhizal relationships that they have. But so when it comes to cultivating the magics and the wine caps with your plants, really there's no difference except for that the wine caps prefer wood and the magic mushrooms, if it's a psilocybe mushroom or a Pinaleus, it's going to prefer manure. And so if you're growing, cannabis plants outdoors, your compost is manure based, or you're top dressing with a little bit of compost like you are with mulch, this is something that you can incorporate colonized grains, spent substrate, and this is what you can also do to cover the top, as your plant matures and sometimes those roots start to become exposed right next to the plant. Some people are mulching to cover up that, and you can do that with your mushroom substrate. And so really what this does is it allows for the soil underneath your cannabis plant to still provide the plant what it needs, the water, the protection. And then the mushroom substrate that you've covered the top layer of the soil with is going to help provide an extra sponge for water. And so because this cake or this substrate is very dense, filled with mycelium, as that water penetrates through it, that mycelium is going to absorb it. Now, one thing I do want to note is that, the wine cap relationships, the relationship that a wine cap mushroom can have with a plant and exchange that nutrient cycle, it's studied more than psilocybe and in cannabis. And so I can't say directly that having your magic mushrooms next to your cannabis plant is going to help your cannabis plant, other than the fact that it will help with water retention, lack of soil erosion, and it could also potentially help to attract the insects to eat the mushrooms instead of eat the flowers that are growing on the cannabis plant, depending on when it's what stage it's at.
I mean, it makes sense, right? And we know like, hey, it doesn't interface this way or that way. But to me, it's like I've seen such good results from broad spectrum compost that has a bunch of different, or these types of fungal products that have a bunch of different species of fungi, even the ectomycorrhizal and the other crazy types of these. I just really think it helps to go full natural and to try to mimic nature as much as possible. And biodiversity seems to really be a key to some of the best gardeners' gardens that I know. When I think about the best growers I know who consistently put out the top quality flower, a lot of them focus on microbial diversity, whether it's bacteria, fungi, everything.
Biodiversity is security.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think it relates to quality. It has to. It's like you said, it's such a complex relationship. I think it would be hubristic to think that we understand it fully. I think you're better off going just by results and what works best for you, and try going maximum diversity, because I think that works best for a lot of the most talented cultivators that I know.
Yeah. And, one other thing I want to mention on the cultivating the magic mushrooms is, for those of you who, are very familiar with the strains or the different species of mushrooms, if you use something that's been hybridized for decades inside of a lab with sterile technique in front of a flow hood that's meant to grow in, particularly like a monotub or something like that, that strain isn't going to be able to do as well as something that's been acclimated to the outdoors. I think we touched on landrace varieties last time. And landrace varieties are something that's very close to my heart, because 2 years ago, I found a magic mushroom in Oklahoma. On June 9th of 2022, I found this mushroom, took spores, and since then have been able to help distribute over 1,000 different units of these spores throughout the country at events I speak at, or at the Oklahoma Mushroom Festival. We give away, like this year, we're giving away 250 free syringes in the VIP.
So
bag.
cool.
And so what we're trying to do is spread awareness and emphasize the importance of growing these landrace varieties that actually have value, because they have more access to like the ability to adapt that we see in nature that plants or other fungi or insects have, versus these indoor varieties that have been hybridized. They can't really deal with the high temperature swings, or the lack of humidity, or the cold temperature than the hot days. And so, especially in Oklahoma, what we needed was something that could grow in our environment. So the best thing that we could possibly choose is something that already grows there. And I'm so grateful. It's seriously one of the best days of my life to have been able to found a magic mushroom growing in a state that I live in, and be able to collect it and share the spores, and get to hear people tell me that they've tried it and that they enjoy it and that they're growing it outdoors. And the thing about landrace is that even when you contaminate, even when something goes wrong, you can still put it outdoors, and the odds of it working are much greater than if it was one of those hybrid strains.
There's so many parallels between what you just said in the growing world. Like what you said about land races is dead on. Even just cuts that I've ran inside for round after round, and you take them outside, sometimes they take off and they do great. But other times it's like you said, they can't adapt to the environment. It's some sort of law of nature where the less you expose these living organisms to the elements, the more sensitive they can become to those elements down the road. I think it's the same reason doctors flip-flopped on giving your children peanuts. At first it was like, oh, peanut allergies on the rise, keep your kids away from peanuts. And they saw peanut allergies skyrocketed even from there. And now they go, give your kids peanuts, give it to them early, expose them. So it's similar to that. Also, your story with the mushroom is kind of similar to like a lot of breeders have like a story about a cut that they like, the cut that was given to me or smuggled across the thing, or my grandpa did it, or I pulled it out of a dumpster, like Riser Rich's story. It's like the magic or the serendipity of the botany of desire. Like because you were out hunting that day and you happened to find this one thing growing, then you took it and proliferated it across the state, nation, and globe more so than it ever could have done on its own, because of that botany of desire. You're cultivating something that's desirable to you, and therefore you're doing the plant a service when it comes to natural selection by proliferating it on your behalf and on its behalf. So pretty cool stuff. It's heavy stuff. I love it.
Yeah, and anyone who's listening, if you guys haven't had the opportunity to grow the Oklahoma Wild, just shoot me a message. I'd be more than happy to give you a discount on that spores, because we're really just trying to see more Oklahomans grow. Everyone's on this big kick to grow native plants, but I'm like on an even bigger kick to like grow native mushrooms.
That's awesome. Just before we go on, talk to me about that Oklahoma Wild for just a second. I know that strains of your fungi are much like strains of my plants, which they're very different from one another. How would you describe the Oklahoma Wild from a medicinal or effect basis?
Yeah, I would describe it as very comparable to Golden Teacher. As far as the effects, it's a 0.5% per dried gram. So since the day that I found it and we've been cultivating and testing, I've been doing testing with out-of-state labs to actually verify, just like we do with cannabis, what the potency of these active compounds is. So right now, what we're seeing is about 0.5% per dried gram of total active compounds. So
gentle.
Yeah, that's like a very gentle. That's like, imagine your cannabis plant only having 0.25% cannabinoids and 0.25% terpenes, and that's it.
Right. Well, that's what I like. I sound like those people who don't smoke cannabis very often, where they're like, this stuff is too strong for me. Give me something gentle. That's what I like with my fungi. Oklahoma teachers, Golden Teachers have traditionally been my go-to because they're like, I know them. I can trust them. They've never done me wrong.
And that's, that's one thing that like a lot of people are looking for. People are looking for something that's in a sense reliable, familiar. It's not going to send them to the moon unexpectedly.
Yes.
And so the reason that I like the Oklahoma Wild is because it's easy to grow. And like when you compare it side by side to Golden Teacher, it grows faster because it's a landrace. When you compare the potency level to something that's super strong, like say Hillbilly was isolated and then domesticated in a lab, and so it's going to have a much stronger effect. It was, in a sense, selected for its potency, whereas Oklahoma Wild is not selected for potency. It's actually selected for ease of cultivation, because I believe that's the most important aspect. Is beginners need to be able to cultivate it to be able to try it, and we don't want beginners to cultivate something that's going to send them to the moon and never come back.
But that's perfect, man. That sounds a lot like what we're doing with the overgrow, get people growing it. You can always chomp a little bit more if you need. I have had quite an experience with medical fungi since we've last spoken, because I was having another bout of these insane cluster headaches, which my new doctor says those aren't cluster headaches. And he thinks I have some nerve thing, and I'm doing way better now.
Are you taking lion's mane?
I'm taking a blend. Should I be eating more lion's mane?
We'll talk about it after, but you should definitely focus specifically on lion's mane. If it has anything to do with nerve or brain health, you should definitely be focusing on lion's mane and getting a nice effective dose of that.
You got it. And if we have time, I definitely want to, we got to talk about this next point, because it's probably the coolest thing you've ever sent me. But also, if we have time, I want to talk to you about recipes, like eating mushrooms. Anyway, let's see if we can do this. You sent me in the guide. I was like, this is so cool. You sent me a bullet point that's, I'm just going to read it. How to grow a flame resistant mushroom based ashtray that you can use when smoking. Are you going to do this?
Oh yeah. And I can send you some photos. Maybe I can put together a reel, and I'm going to make another one today, and I'll mail it to you so you can use it on the Growcast podcast.
Oh, dude, you are way too cool. I would be so grateful for that. So what does this look like for the people at home?
I'm going to take it a step further, because it's actually going to be grown on hemp hurd.
What? It's a weed mushroom ashtray?
Yes. So you're going to be smoking, and then you can ash it in a fungal, I don't even know. It's so complex. It's like a mushroom based, but fungal grown ashtray.
Wow.
I mean, sorry, cannabis based, but fungal grown ashtray.
That sounds awesome. What does this process look like?
Yeah, dude, it's so kind of like how I touched on earlier, like with the cannabis plants when you're chopping them down in the wood chipper. So what this company Ecovative has done is they've been purchasing large amounts of hemp hurd. So if you're familiar with like hempcrete, making houses and making insulation with the cannabis plant, there's a process called decortification where they strip the outer part of the cannabis plant and then they only keep the in part, which is the hurd. So HURD, there's hurd and fiber. The fiber is used for clothes and the hurd is used for hempcrete and other applications like this. So this company purchases the internal stems components to the cannabis plant. They take mycelium and they inoculate this bag filled with this hemp hurd. So it looks like a bag filled with little pieces of hemp. And then this mushroom grows over the piece of all the pieces of hemp. And then from there, you stuff it into any size, shape, or mold that you want. And this mushroom will regrow and remyceliate in the form that it's grown in. And then you can remove it. You bake it to kill off the mycelium so there's no more fungal growth. It's completely dead. And from there, you have a flame resistant, cannabis based, fungal grown ashtray.
Wow.
I mean, it's epic.
Is it sturdy? Is it like solid?
Oh, yeah. You can you can kick it. You could drop it off your table. It wouldn't break. But the best thing about it is that if it does break, if something does happen, all you have to do is compost it because it's two materials. It's cannabis and it's mushrooms.
So it's no waste.
And then guess what? You just grow another.
You grow another one with that same compost and the cycle starts all over again. Man, that is really, really cool. Essentially using a mold?
Yeah. So choose if you have two bowls of the same size or two glasses of the same, anything that you have, if you don't have a negative form of it, you just get two of the same object and squish it. And from there, you can create that form. And so in particular, what I have is this they call it a squiggle dish. It's meant to ship bottles. But literally, as soon as I saw it, I thought this is an ashtray.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. The little soft thing that they put on the bottom of bottles that holds onto it.
Yes.
And it's not quite even. It's got a little bit of design to it.
You got it.
Wow.
And so I saw that and I was like, why isn't this an ashtray? Because with hempcrete, you can put a flame directly on the hempcrete and it won't catch on fire. And it's so incredible because it's the same thing with mushrooms, is that you can take your hot joint or your blunt or whatever you're smoking and you can ash it right on to the mycelium. And all it's going to do is turn it this really brown kind of, gives patina to the ashtray. It doesn't burn, not incendiary in any way. It just kind of leaves this little ash mark on it and you just keep going.
That sounds awesome. It reminds me of a video I saw. You should do a follow-up video. That would be great for your channel. There's a video where someone took a molten ball of sphere of metal and put it on a pineapple skin. Have you seen that viral video?
Yeah, pineapple is also is very heat resistant.
And it just smoked. It didn't melt straight through this thing, shockingly. So someone else took that video and did their own thing where they made a Zelda style shield, and it was all out of pineapple skin, and they blasted it with a flamethrower. You should make a mushroom shield, and we should take a flamethrower to that thing. Put that up on your Instagram, because you're right, super flame resistant. Why are we using this for fighting dragons?
Yeah, exactly. That's honestly, I'm going to have to figure out how to build a mold in the shape of a shield. I would say in this, what we call mycomaterials or mycelium materials, generally what's the harder thing to do is create the mold, because the only other thing you do after is fill it.
Someone is listening to this right now who's like, I can do this.
Anyone who is listening, reach out to me. I can give you the contact information and a discount code to get this material and molds from the company who's already doing it across the nation, or I can just send you some tips and tricks to learn how to do it on your own, because you don't have to use their particular strain or species of mushroom. You can use whichever one you want, but the one that they have one of the largest private fungal databases in the world. And so what they've gone through is collected and tested hundreds of thousands of different strains and species for their application abilities. And so how strong they are, how white they are, how fast they grow, how slow it takes for them to decompose, like all of these different things to create what they could call the most ideal strain for the mycomaterials. So,
Wow.
this is a whole world to explore. And one other thing I want to mention is that you could also create plant starts or plant pots out of these mycelium materials. You could be growing a living plant in a mycelium vase that has a hole at the bottom that would work the same way as your terracotta. It would allow the air, the water to permeate through the side of the mycelium vase, as well as the excess water to drain out the hole in the bottom.
I would love to see some of this stuff, man. That's perfect. And then you can keep your mushroom shield on hand for when you eat those hillbillies and you see a dragon. You'll be prepared.
Exactly.
Then you don't have to be scared.
Growcast membership. Come and join the best community in cannabis cultivation. I would love to have you inside. We make growing fun and easy. If you're running into any problems in your grow, we can diagnose your problems accurately and provide you with solutions that work. The last thing you want to do is run to Google with your grow problems. There is so much bad conflicting advice out there. Come jump in our membership, jump in our plant problems channel. We will walk you through it and hold your hand and fix any problems you have. Plus, we have a thriving community for you to connect with, people to trade cuts with and seeds. We've got live streams and giveaways and contests. We've got the Grand Pheno Hunt going on right now. Someone's going to win $1,000 for hunting through a pack of our seeds. And we've got another round 2 of the Grand Pheno Hunt coming up so soon. You're going to want to get in membership just to see what it's all about and to make sure that you get it on the next Grand Pheno Hunt and all the grow challenges we have going on. You can find it at growcastpodcast.com/membership. Get on in there. You will not regret it. Send me a message that you heard about this ad. I'll even refund your join fee so you can enjoy 30 days free. And like I said, get in on this Grand Pheno Hunt. It's one of the greatest things we do. The next one's going to be even bigger, and someone's going to win $1,000 just for growing along in Growcast membership. Shout out to Hygrozyme for sponsoring the Grand Pheno Hunt. We love Hygrozyme, and they are supporting us as we make some fun contests and grow-alongs for the community, because that's what it's all about, supporting the growers, supporting the cannabis community, and making all of this easy and fun as it should be. So special thank you to Hygrozyme, special thank you to all the members and all the Grand Pheno hunters. What are you waiting for? Come and join us. We've got the greatest community in cannabis. Growcastpodcast.com/membership. We'll see you there.
What about eating these things, man? What are your favorite ways to consume mushrooms and your favorite species to eat?
Lion's mane for sure. Oysters for sure. Just because these are ones that we can find at the farmer's market. So I'll give you 2 lists. The ones that you can find at the farmer's market that I love are going to be your lion's mane, your oysters, piopinos, your chestnuts. And the simplest go-to way for those is to put your pan on medium. Notice I said put the pan on medium before you add the mushrooms.
It's like a steak. Get it hot.
Get it really nice and hot because your mushrooms are 80 to 90% water. So when you add those mushrooms to that hot pan, a lot of that water is going to be released. And it's only when that water is released that other flavors can reabsorb into the mushrooms. And so if you take your pan, you put your mushrooms in there, you turn it on hot, and then you add your butter or your oil, nothing is going to absorb into your mushrooms because they're still full of water. You have to get that water out for them to be able to reabsorb what's left in the pan.
Do you drain it or do you just do you get it out and then throw it? You know what I mean? Do you ever do a drain?
Of the water?
Yeah. Do you need to? Is that because
No.
ground beef, you do that?
Typically the water evaporates right out. You
Got
don't have to, there's not, it's not like excess, but it's just enough that when your pan's on medium and you put those mushrooms in there, you'll see some water droplets come out. And after, about a minute or 2, you won't notice any more water. And that's when you add your butter or your oil.
Ooh.
And, personally, I love to get it in there with garlic, a little bit of chives, a little bit of salt. That's a great way to just saute and eat them as a side. One of the ways that I've recently enjoyed was stuffing them. So if you have a morel mushroom,
Yes.
it's a mushroom that's hollow on the inside, and you can take a mixture of trying to think what the most popular one is. I think it's cream cheese and bacon or something like that.
Yep. I've seen that.
And you fill the morels and then you batter them and then you fry them. And so those are some good ways for morels because they're hollow, so you can stuff them. The lion's mane, I really love to slice thinly, or you can leave it kind of thick like a steak and you can saute it, or you can put it directly on the grill. And so the mushrooms, because they're made of chitin, it takes a lot for them to actually char and burn.
Yeah.
So what you'll see is that you can put it on the grill, that these edges of the mushrooms will get it nice and crispy, but that the center of the mushroom still has really good moisture and it's not going to be too dry.
Oh God, it sounds so good. Now I'm getting hungry.
Last one, we'll finish you with dessert then, because one of my favorite ways to consume like wild forage mushrooms, so like mushrooms that you can't cultivate, they're only able to be found out in the wild because Mother Nature does it best. And this is a mushroom called the chanterelle. And chanterelles grow in many different colors and shapes and sizes. And one of my favorite ways is to basically sugar glaze them and then add them into ice cream.
What? Get out of here.
And so it's like a sugary mushroom umami ice cream. And it's delicious.
Really? That sounds very interesting. I'd definitely give it a try. That sounds great. I've seen those chanterelles. Just delicious, man. Just delicious. I had the pleasure of eating wild foraged morels. I'd never had them until my early 30s. And then I just had them a few years in a row. And my God, they're just the most delicious thing in the world. I mean, I love all different types, but those wild ones and the morels, and like you said, stuff them, stick a cheese stick down in there. That's good stuff. I like the different cultures around the world's take on the mushroom, right? So like Korean hot pot, that king oyster mushroom is my favorite, but no one does it better than your people, Jacob. You take that mushroom and you stuff it with some Italian sausage and some like a little bit of breadcrumb mix in there, and you put some cheese on it and you bake it. Are you kidding me?
This is too good, Jordan.
That's my favorite. I think that's the best way to do it. But yeah, I'll eat a mushroom any which way, any country, any time, any place. I will eat a crazy amount of fungi. That's my go-to. So, and then lion's mane, you said for the medicinal nerve stuff. I'll have to go and get myself a whole bunch of lion's mane. I know I take like capsules that are supposedly, but I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel like you got to eat the real thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a whole thing we could get into to talk like the consumption, but really when you consume the mushroom fresh, it's like consuming the cannabis plant and expecting the effects of smoking it.
Right.
And so the effects are definitely different. In some ways, you will get more benefits eating the mushroom than you will like for digestive health. Typically, we see patients who consume the mushroom cooking it have an increase in quality of life versus someone who takes a capsule.
Wow.
Because they're not taking enough of that mushroom biomass to help alleviate their indigestion.
That makes sense to me though. So I'm going to start on my diet just because of this episode.
Dude, I appreciate that. And another thing, Matt, I recommend is, are you interested in extracts or are you interested in the whole fruiting body?
I would absolutely take extracts, but generally I like to eat the whole fruiting body. I'll eat the fuck out of some mushrooms.
Oh yeah, same. And that's like, for me, I like to do both. I every morning I wake up, I take a lion's mane gummy. So we take the lion's mane, we extract it, and then we put the extracts into a gummy. And so for those people who are interested in trying legal mushroom extracts for like a medicinal, functional, non-psychoactive way, they can try them in gummies. We also have tinctures. We also have capsules. And this is a great way for people to figure out what works best for them and at what dose.
Yeah, probably best to do both. That's the answer, right? That's the way to go with cannabis as well. Listen, Jacob, this flew by, man. I want to make sure we have time for plugs at the end here. What an awesome episode. Everything from the outdoor cultivation side-by-side to the flame-resistant mushroom ashtray. Go and follow at Oklahoma Fungi on Instagram. That's at Oklahoma Fungi. Where else can people find you, and where will you be on your travels? This should be dropping just before your amazing Mush Fest.
Epic. Yes. Can't wait for the second annual OK Mush Fest. And you can also learn more about that event on okmushfest.com or at OK Mushroom Festival on Instagram or Facebook. And if you visit the website, you can check out all of our official speakers, all of our vendors. We have 118 vendors this year. We're in 17,000 square foot expo hall. I mean, this is, if you came last year, it's going to be a whole new world this year. And I'm so grateful for the support the community has shown and for the greater support that I've seen from people who live from out of Oklahoma who are coming for the first and only time, they say, to visit Oklahoma just because there's a mushroom festival. And so if you haven't been to Oklahoma and you want to come out for the festival, use promo code MUSHLOVE10 on our ticket website. That will save you 10% off on all ticket sales. So we really appreciate all the Growcast listeners, the support that they've shown me through the past couple of years and just getting to work with Jordan at the Community Cup, the Home Grower Showcase, and everything that we have coming up in the future. So if you want to learn more, check it out, oklahomafungi.com, okmushroomfestival.com.
You got it, man. October 12th and 13th, I'll be there. You just, everywhere you go, you're crushing it. The last OK Mush Fest was so much fun. So much fun. And I had to grab a booth as soon as I could this year because there's just so many great people to connect with and share our mission of Overgrow and talk about fungi. And hopefully we'll be able to hang out at the after party. Yeah. I'll see you at the after party. Oklahoma Sensi after party, afterlife party.
That's
there
right.
You go.
Saturday, the festival is from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., but at 7 p.m. to midnight, we have the Afterlife Party hosted by Cincy, Oklahoma. That's going to be an epic time to come and relax, get to hang out. There's a consumption area, so we can just hang out, enjoy, relax, and enjoy the afterlife.
Oh, man, I'm there. I can't wait. Again, at the time of this episode dropping, it'll be in about a week and a half. It's October 12th and 13th. I'll see you there, everybody. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you for everything, my friend. We appreciate you at this community, always dropping some awesome episodes. This was another one. So let us know what we can do for you, yeah? Anything Growcast can do for Oklahoma Fungi, you just let us know.
I sure will. Thank you all so much, especially you, Jordan. Appreciate your support from the beginning, man. Everyone who's listening, you're in the Mush Love family, whether you're growing mushrooms or not, and I really appreciate you for being here.
That's awesome, man. Take care, Jacob. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you, dear listener. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back with another episode here shortly, so stay tuned. Jump into membership, come and see me, come and hang out. I'm always hanging out there. And until next time, this is Oklahoma Fungi and Jordan River signing off, saying be safe and grow smarter.
And much love.
Much love. Bye-bye.
That's all. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Thank you to Oklahoma Fungi. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to all you members who make this possible. GrowcastPodcast.com is where you can find all the stuff. Seeds, membership, classes. Just a few spots left in the OK Calyx class as I record this. Maybe sold out already by the time this drops. Before we wrap it up, shout out to Rooted Leaf Nutrients. Just pulled down my run. It looks amazing. The Super Snow Brunch came out incredible thanks to Rooted Leaf Nutrients. RootedLeaf.com code GROWCAST saves you 20% on the best nutrients money can buy. No pHing. I didn't pH this whole run. Just mixed it and ran it in some Pro Mix, and I got some of the best flour I've ever had. Loaded with carbon and the micro and macronutrients that your plants need. Nothing more, nothing less. That lush green is like rocket fuel, people. If you're not completely satisfied with your nutrient protocol, switch to Rooted Leaf. Use their medium feed chart in a peat-based mix like Pro Mix. It works in any medium, but if you're just getting started or you need to switch styles, grab some Pro Mix, grab some Rooted Leaf. Use their medium feed chart, use their foliar spray. Watch the magic happen, folks. I love the results from Rooted Leaf. RootedLeaf.com, code GROWCAST, 20% off. Thank you to Rooted Leaf so much. Nick will be back on the show soon, by the way. That's all for now. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll let you go. Be safe out there. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Mushrooms are like sitting in the bowl of Jell-O that they're trying to eat.